Okay, before we start on section 1.5, I thought it was worth just spending a little time reviewing the order of operations. This is something that's just so fundamental to everything that we do this semester that if you have some confusion here, just want to get that straightened out before we move on. So some of you have probably learned an acrostic for the order of operations. One of them that's pretty common is "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." And that represents the first letter of each of the pieces of the order of operations. So if that helps you remember it, great. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I think there's some others that I've heard, but that's the one that's probably the most common. And if that helps you remember it, but I do want to walk through them just to make sure that there's no confusion, because that really doesn't tell you everything you need to know, but that can be a way to help you remember the order. So the first thing that you want to do is anything that's in parentheses. You have to simplify what's in parentheses before you move on. And it's not just parentheses. If there's brackets or anything else that indicates grouping, you want to simplify inside of those first. It also includes numerator and denominator of fractions. So you can't divide a fraction out until you've simplified the numerator, done all of the operations that are in the numerator and simplified the denominator. And what we're talking about here are the examples like I have below that are all numbers. We don't have variables. We're not simplifying variables. We're actually working out what the value of these expressions are. So you would work through the numerator, work through the denominator, and then you would do the division, because a fraction really is a division of two numbers. Finally, if there's, for example, a root sign or something else like that, that is just something that there's just a built-in parenthesis. So in this first example, underneath this square root sign, we have 4 plus 7 times 3. That is a grouping that has to be simplified before you take the square root. Okay, so parentheses isn't just parentheses, it's things that have implied parentheses, like our square root sign, the numerator of a fraction, denominator of a fraction. If there's nested parentheses or brackets, looks like I left off a parenthesis on this one. If there's nested, you would start on the innermost and then work your way out. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is exponents. So if there's any exponents, you simplify those before you move on to, the multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. Now, one thing that I think sometimes we forget whenever we're just going through that numeric, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, is that roots are exponents. And we're going to, I think we get to that later this semester, but a square root is actually an exponent of 1/2. So another way of writing the square root right here would be to say that we're taking all of that to the 1/2 power. A cubed root is to the 1/3 power. So when we say that we're doing exponents next, we have to remember we're also doing square roots. They are considered exponents in the order of operations. The next step is to do all multiplication and division. The other thing I see people doing is when they remember the expression, they think it's multiplication and then division. It's not. They are on the same level. So the way I have it written here, multiplication and division are the same step. And you're just going to work yourself left to right doing all of the multiplication and division before you move on to the next step. And then finally, we get to addition and subtraction. And again, those are one step. They are not two separate steps. So you're going to do them left to right as you move across. And parentheses are first. Inside of the parentheses, or inside of, for example, underneath a root sign or a numerator, denominator, inside of there, if there's more than one operation, you're going to follow the order of operations inside of that. So let's just work through these and just make sure. And if you want to pause the video right now and just work these on your own, and then you can restart the video and make sure that you're on the right track. I think that would be an excellent thing to do. And if you get these 3 correct without, before you restart the video, then you probably have a pretty good handle of the order of operations. If not, that means this might be something that you need to spend a little more time on. And I can definitely point you to some resources, or you could just Google like order of operations worksheet and find one that has a key as well as a original problems, and just do some practice on order of operations. So for this very first one, according to the order of operations, we want to do parentheses first, and we already talked about that underneath the square root sign, it says if there's parentheses. So we need to simplify what's inside there first. There is two different operations. There's addition, there's also multiplication. That dot represents multiplication. So since there's more than one operation inside there, then inside the parentheses, I need to think about order of operations. So which comes first, addition or multiplication? And obviously, multiplication comes first, so I'm going to do 7 times 3 first, which gives me 21. Then I'm going to add the 4. So I get 4 plus 21, which is 25, minus 8. Now, since I've simplified the parentheses, I move on down through my steps, and it says to take exponents next, and we've said that roots qualify as exponents. So square root of 25 is 5, minus 8. The only thing left to do is the subtraction, so I finally get to do that, and I get negative 3. Okay, let's look at the second problem. Again, parentheses first. We already talked about how we actually have parentheses that are understood. They're not written in, but they're understood. There's parentheses around that numerator. That's the top of our fraction. Parentheses around the denominator. So let's just do those. There's only one operation in each one. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. And in the denominator, 8 plus 2 is 10. That's a 2 up there. My mouse kind of did some crazy stuff. So I have negative 2 divided by 10. That does simplify. I'm going to pull the negative out in front. That's typically what you would do whenever you have a fraction with a negative either in the numerator or denominator. You go ahead and pull that out in front of the fraction. The 2 and the 10 both can be divided by 2. So I end up with negative 1/5. Okay, the last one. Parentheses first, so let's just work our way across and do our parentheses. 3 plus 7 is 10. I can't do the minus 9 yet, so I'm just going to copy that down. And then plus 3 times, I don't know why I'm all of a sudden having trouble with my mouse kind of skipping around. 1 minus 2, that's in parentheses, so I need to calculate that, and I get negative 1. So now I'm left with a problem that has an expression that has multiplication, subtraction, and addition. I have 2 times 5, so there's multiplication here. I've got minus 9 plus 3, and this is times negative 1. I've just indicated that by keeping that negative 1 in parentheses. So what do I do first? I actually don't have parentheses left because inside each parentheses there's just a single number. I don't have any exponents, so I'm down to this step, which is multiplication and division. There are 2 multiplications, so I'm going to do those next. 2 times 10 is 20. Yeah, this is really having a hard time writing. Let me erase that. 2 times 10 is 20. I'll try going a little slower. There we go. Minus 9, because I have to do my multiplications first. 3 times negative 1 is a negative 3, so plus negative 3 is the same as subtracting 3. So now I'm left with just subtraction. I go left to right. 20 minus 9 is 11 minus 3. 11 minus 3 is 8. Okay, so if you were able to do those 3 problems, that's obviously not comprehensive. There might be other things that will pop up, but if you were able to do those, if you paused and worked through them, you probably have a pretty good handle on order of operations. If you need to, make a note of this. I didn't put this in any of the handouts. This is just kind of an aside talking through this. Jot this down and practice them, and as you run into trouble, you'll have this to refer back to.